Hindus are, why is going away? I don't understand. Any problem? Hindus are conditioned by the European ideas. European concept of Jiva, Atma, Jagat, they are all very, very materialistic, very superficial, or very animalistic, let us say. There is no deeper concept of Atma. There is no deeper concept of God. There is no deeper concept of the world. Not only their understanding is too small, too narrow, they made that too superficial concept as a universal. And now they are judging Hindu ideas, Hindu spiritual ideas about Ishvara, about Jagat, and about Jiva, and about life, and the purpose of life, goal of life, and the experiences. So for all these things, they are taking their views alone as the standard, as universal. They are judging everybody as wrong and they alone as right. Now they are doing them through education, through media, through all kinds of means, all kinds of powers they are employing. And the biggest weakness of Hindus, rather called foolishness of Hindus, is we complain and at the same time keep quiet. I am not talking of you people or a few common people who go to the who receive the modern education, who receive modern media, who are exposed to modern media and the world and get conditioned. When you are exposed to this modern media, modern education, naturally you get conditioned to European or American thinking. But our traditional people, is a very strangeness of traditional people is, they never bother to correct their view. First thing is to be able to correct the view not only of our own Hindus, but also the world at large. First we have to study what is our Indian thinking. Our own Hindus being exposed to the West, how they are deviated from the deeper thinking of Hinduism. About life, about Atma, about Jagat, about Jiva, about Ishvara, and about relationship, about Purushartha and everything. How our own people are getting influenced, and we need to understand their influences and explain to them how those ideas which they are carrying are wrong, are superficial, and how Hindu ideas are deeper, and human life can become better only with these deeper ideas. To be able to explain them, first we have to understand where do they stand. Okay? First we have to understand the background of our own Hindus. And while understanding the background of our own Hindus, naturally you will have to study the whole West. Not the whole, but at least some basic vision. What are the thinkings of the thoughts of the West, and how they are influential through our education system, media, and the books, and everything, how they are politics and everything, how they are influencing. Unless you understand them and explain to them in contrast, unless you contrast them, you won't even be able to understand anything. And we our own people think that our traditional people, Hindus should, without learning anything, should accept Hindu and then read Hindu books, or even without reading Hindu books, not only read, without undergoing Hindu Shastras, just they should start accepting Hinduism for no reason, just like that they should accept. Our traditional people expect that our Hindus should live like Hindus, follow Hinduism, just accept them. No teaching, no education, no explanation, no contrasting, nothing. Just like that, Hindus should accept our Hinduism as great. See, this is what is the problem. I think my covering of these few ideas is too small. It is not at all enough. The time is very short, but at least I touch them, and some of the listeners who do not know this idea, they will be exposed. So our traditional people are thinking that our Hindus themselves should approach and we will teach them. They themselves should offer, come and learn, we will teach them. Second thing. And the teaching also, they won't give you, they won't be able to explain the contrast with the modern thinking, how the modern science and social sciences and religions and Western civilization, they don't know their principles, their character, to be able to contrast and explain to them, explain to you. They don't know, they cannot contrast. They will simply say this is Hinduism. And that too, they want to tell simply in a simply way, easy way to understand. They have got their own technical way. They ask you to read out Ramayana. They ask you to read Shankara Bhashya. They will teach you sentence by sentence and explain all Vedanta. No, you yourself have to study the whole Shankara Bhashya, get those ideas and contrast yourself with the European and Western modern ideas, and then recognize the difference between them. This much they leave it to yourself. So this is the problem. That's why the Europeans, particularly during British period when they came here, we left it to them to present Hinduism to the world. Why did Hindus themselves not present Hinduism to the world? What is the true nature of Hinduism, Hindu philosophy, Hindu thinking, Hindu life? Hindus did not bother, even now do not bother to present Hinduism to the whole world. What is it? So we left it to the missionaries, and it is the missionaries who came. When they started studying our Shastras, Hindus became very proud and happy that, oh, foreigners are coming and studying from us. Max Muller and all those people are studying our Shastras. Hindus felt very proud and happy that they are studying, therefore we have become gurus to them. But they were studying more as missionaries to present them negatively. Now you know, all over the world knows Hinduism only through the books of missionaries. Recently started a slight alternative view, but we are doing more as a secondary service. The primary service, the whole world knows, whether atheist, whether religious people or open-minded people. All the people know about Hinduism or India only through our Christian missionaries during British period. During our colonial period, what they have presented, the same books are filling the European American libraries. All they were translated by these missionaries alone. Did we ever present our Hinduism? I think Vivekananda was the first one, but he also didn't present Hinduism truly from the Hindu standpoint, though because he mixed up lot of Christianity and European ideas. So it was a good beginning compared to the earlier people. It was a much better, much better, but that was not enough. What I meant to say is, it was not enough. We needed to present to them, not that to see, as we Hindus study our Shastras, don't teach them all Upanishad, Shankara Bhashya directly to them, because it is irrelevant to them. It is something like publishing a Sannyasa Dharma into translate and give it to the Americans. What is the use? Sannyasa Dharma is irrelevant to them, and you translate Manusmriti and give to them, ask them to read it for themselves. This is irrelevant, because they have no life of as we have here in India. The life is of Indian life and Hindu life. They don't know the whole Hindu life, and it's not necessary for them, isn't it? So the principles, understandable to their life, how to enrich their life and understand Hinduism. So Hindus who just don't know, so Europeans, we left it to the missionaries, just they translated. Now I think many things are there. So only one thing about, take the killing, the very idea of killing, very idea of violence. It is most misunderstood and it is presented. So the killing and the war of Christianity, Islam and the European civilization is different. In Indian civilization, war and killing or war and death is understood totally differently. We take life differently and we have a deeper vision of war and killing. Therefore, the Devi killing Mahishasura. One is war, another is war with Asuras, the wicked people. Two things are there. One is war, another is there is a usual war. War as a sport. In India, war was more like a cricket game. Hindus, the Hindu Rajas were always advised to continuously wage war, but war is more like a tournament. See, instead of, they concentrated on war, they misrepresented. I have to tell you, you may say that why every step you keep on talking of West, 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 every step you touch. Because we Hindus do not know anything other than what is presented by West about Hinduism. All our modern educated people know, they don't know in fact, even we understand. We traditional people understand as they open their mouth, all their thinking, their understanding about Hinduism is coming through the Westerners' understanding of Hinduism. How Westerners understood Hinduism is presented. I tell you, do you read any Hindu book or Hindu Shastras directly from Hindu gurus and also in Indian languages? Most of you read through English and that too written by foreigners. Even Vivekananda's looks like more, Vivekananda's most of his talks, I think 80% or 90% of talks were addressed in Europe and America. And all those books are published directly as it is. I feel even now, I feel Vivekananda's speeches should be categorized into two. Directly addressed to Indians, to categorize them. I think 2 books, separate volumes. Directly addressing Indians and those addressed to Europeans and Americans. Those books, those talks which were addressed to European and Americans should be given to Indians with good footnotes, with well footnotes. Otherwise, we mix up and then read whole thing. What is addressed to Americans, Hindus read. I think there is just as we call it a Varna Sankara is a big problem. Similarly, this Sankara means this mixing up, thorough confusion Hindus are going, because we learn Hinduism through the Westerners' writing. Even Vivekanandas were addressed to Westerners. So only some of them we could see them addressed to India. I think the 3rd volume and a part of 4th volume, these alone were addressed to India, and few personal interviews in the 5th volume or 7th volume. That's all. Most of them were addressed to foreigners alone. And even in these things within India also, he was addressing to some people in Bengal, some people in area. Again, we need commentary there, explanation there, whom he had. Our Shastra says, whom we are talking, listen to the person. Look at the person, his background, his understanding capacity, his adhikaritva level. Then the teaching should be addressed. Otherwise, we take it, anything is addressed to anybody, anywhere in the world, any centuries ago. All that we just start reading, generalizing it, and there is a thorough confusion to us. Okay, this is what we have. And therefore, here, the first thing is, Indians don't think death as a something grey, something strange, something horrible. Okay, we call it body. Atma is Atma. Every Jiva is only a Chaitanya Rupa, and he assumes the body due to karma, and the purpose of the life is only a tentative for a purpose of karma and bhoga. Manushya Janma is a both. It is a karma as well as a bhoga. You will get some bhogas, and also you can acquire new punya and papa. Therefore, human life through the body is meant for this thing. So, just as a birth is the natural, death is also natural. We don't look upon as a one birth and then make it as death is a something horrible. If you read this, what you call Yuddhas in our Puranas, and Devi, particularly Saptashati Devi, killing wars and killing the Asuras. 3 things are there. Killing, that is a death, war and asura killing. 3 points we have to understand. I think more elaborately I can't do because time is short. I'll touch as briefly as possible, because all these concepts, all these things we have to understand much better. First, you understand the nature of human life. Life is good as long as you live for good purpose. But dying is also good if you die for a good purpose. Okay? Death, it's somehow living is meaningless. Hinduism says somehow you live them in any manner is meaningless. When you live for good purpose, for dharma, for chaturveda purushartha. When you die for a good purpose, for dharma. Because if you die for a good purpose, for dharma, for saving others, nothing is wrong. Even death itself is an experience to you. Don't you know that? Our Shastra says that. Even dying in a battle itself is a good education for Jiva. He understands it is a painful. He experiences the pain, and also he gives up the body. And he understands I am something more than the body. Okay, Atma is something more than the body. Death itself is a beautiful experience. It teaches you the reality of life, reality of your Atma, that birth, just as a birth is a normal, death is also normal. It comes and goes. Okay, when death is bad only, when you, just as doing any bad karma is a papa, voluntarily, foolishly killing or killing for wrong purpose, whether you kill yourself or kill others for wrong purpose, that is papa. Okay, otherwise, if death is done with a good purpose, it's good, nothing wrong in it. If it is a dharma, it is for punya, or it is for a sacrifice, it is for tapas, whether it is Sati Sahagamanam or like Sutikshna, etc., rishis in Valmiki Ramayana, after having darshana with Rama, and they made a fire and jumped into fire and left the body. They voluntarily leave the body. So there is a giving up your body according to Dharma Shastra. There is a Shastra. There is a systematic way. Both men can give up the life, woman also can give up the life. So because sacrificing a life itself is a one yajna, one sadhana, is a one great tapas. But dying also in a positive way, constructive way, as a punya karyam, as a tapas, is a good thing, because it is only separating yourself from the body, but you remain, Atma remains. First you understand, birth means assuming a body, death means giving away the body. Both should be done with a good purpose. Birth also should be done due to your good punya, you get a good birth. And the same death, because in birth is not in your hand, it comes as a result of karma. So birth is not a karma, it is only a anubhava. Okay, but death you can do. You can consciously do it. So by your abusing your life, your ahara vihara, misbehaving, tensions, and your what you call in indulging in pleasure, in overindulging in pleasures and tension, etc., you can abuse your life and you will get your ayushu will come down. Akala mrityu you can get it. That is a papa. Akala mrityu is a papa. But if you voluntarily die for a noble purpose, it is good. But death is appreciated. Therefore, war is appreciated if you understand the principles. Under what condition war was enjoined in our Shastra. It is like a dharma, it is a yajna, I tell you. War is also a good learning, good tapas for our people, because everybody, it is an option. If you want, you can join war. For Kshatriyas, it is a normal dharma. For other caste, it is a Vaikalpika dharma, optional dharma, Naimittika dharma. Nitya karma, Nitya dharma is for Kshatriyas. For all other people, other caste people, other varnas also can join war, but only under certain conditions. If you want to do it, there is no compulsory. But if you take a war as a dharma, do it as a good sacrifice, good tyaga, then it will teach you a lesson. Two things are there. It is for the good of the society to uphold some value, uphold some dharma. Second thing is you also do it as a tyaga, I mean that's a boldness. It gives you a lot of sahasa. It gives you tyaga buddhi. It gives you are a more than the body, you are the Atma. A detachment, a vairagyam for the body, a detachment for the body it gives you. And a noble idea. Two things are there. The war should be waged for a noble idea, for the protection of dharma. And then there are rules for these things. In India, when the war is taught, it is only for certain people, and it is a voluntary choice. Rules, you see them. It is an ideal for you as a tapas, and also to uphold dharma, uphold some value. Third point is, it should be done in a battlefield, or after telling a person. Tell a person that yes, I am here for waging war, and the other person also accepts it, then you start. Otherwise you just don't get when he is sleeping and suddenly kill him, and then or you torture him. This is too much. This is a barbarism. Only West has brought it. We never had that way. In fact, you warn him, you give him a warning once or twice, and then go for him. Or you tell him, yes, I want to wage the war. You give him a weapon. He also holds a weapon. When he is ready, then you wage a war. This was the discipline of war until recently we followed, until Britishers came, we followed this law. Therefore, non-combatant people, when a person, if supposing two people are fighting, the other people, third people were standing by the side and watching, nobody will harm them. Never. That was a below dignity. That is adharma. Nobody would do that. It is the Muslims alone, whoever happened to be there, just to kill them, exploit them, kidnap them, sell the women and men. All these things bought from this barbaric Muslims alone. So, even after the war, they enter into the village, enter into houses and kidnap them, kill them, rob them. They are just robbers. They are not kings or rulers or human beings. They are just basically robbers, essentially robbers they are. So, and we, having read these history books, having read these things, we thought that, oh, war is wrong, war is wrong. These European Islamic Christian religions are teaching us that war is wrong. Bhagavad Gita is teaching war. Oh, Durga Saptashati is teaching war. War is violence. We don't want violence. Violence is wrong. Hinduism is a violent religion. Islam is a peace and Christianity is love. Okay? I think all of you must have heard this nonsense. Not nonsense, is a terrible nonsense. It is covering up their evil. It is not simple nonsense. It is a covering up their crime. They are accusing Hinduism and Hindu Shastras. Okay? It is to cover up their crime, this was assumed. So, for us, war is only you tell the person and also come to the battlefield. There are people who watch. Just like a drama, they come and watch. It will go on, and that too, morning, daytime, after taking breakfast, war starts. Until evening. When the sunset, before the sunset, it stops. So this was a simple like a game. It was like a cricket game Hindus were playing. Keep this in view and look at the Durga Saptashati or Bhagavad Gita or any other Mahabharata and Ramayana. Okay? Keep the very goal of war, the purpose of war, how it is waged, the principles involved. Okay? The principles involved in it. See the whole structure of war. And without that, you just can't understand. And all we know is about war is only our education system gives us, and it gives us only European or Christian thinking or Islamic thinking. And you can never understand, I tell you. As I told you, to explain all these things, time is not enough. Anyway, I have no hope of explaining thoroughly, but a few points I touch. As I already told you, I am not going to tell you everything. And you know, my talk of even on spiritual books are totally different. Unlike our normal people, my talks are totally different. So keep this in view. Now Devi is coming. Now first thing is death. I talked about death. I talked about war. I have not talked details. No, not to disappoint you, but I only touched little. More is to be known. You can study. This is what, just to encourage you, inspire you, so that you can study more. It is only just an introduction. I am not exhaustively talking the purpose of war. So war is a more sane action. It is more like a yajna. It is more like a tapas. And also we don't cheat. No cheating is permitted. People of almost equal age or equal capacity come together. If the other person says that no, I back out, I don't want to wage the war, you will give him up, you forgive him. And even if he is defeated, you respect the person. Even after the war, person is defeated, respect the person. Suppose you invade a kingdom, this is our Raja Dharma. If you invade a kingdom, defeat the king. After defeating the king surrenders. Then what you do? You install the same person on the kingdom, on the throne, and take some gift and certain money and come back. With honorably you come back. And then if a person is killed, suppose, if the king is killed, look for his son or grandson or his brother. Install his brother or son on the throne, And first thing you have to do, this is Rajadharma. Manu says, Mahabharata says, Chanakya says, everybody say this thing. The king who defeated the king, killed the king on his kingdom, 2 or 3 points. One is install his son or brother or somebody on the kingdom. Don't usurp the kingdom like Muslims and these barbarians have done, Christians have done it. Okay, this is our Rajadharma. Keep this in view and talk about our Yuddha. Don't mix up our Yuddha. Don't try to understand our Pauranik Yuddhas, our Shastriya Yuddhas with the background you have about European thinking. Okay, think of our wars. Second point is the rule says that when you the honor the ministers and the people of the kingdom, or honor the ministers and servants of the kingdom with gifts. Second point. Third point is worship every king has got a capital city. In the capital city there is a devata, Ishta devata, Kula devata. Just as a Kula devata, there is your own that kingdom devata. Kingdom devata. You have got Karnataka has got Bhuvaneshwari Devi is our Karnataka devata. Okay? Every state has got its own devata. We have got Tirupati of Andhra devata. Tirupati is for Andhra devata. So once you defeat the king or kill the king, worship that God. Have a darshan of the God and worship. Okay? This is the third point. And also, whatever the dharma, whatever the values and the constitution of the kingdom, uphold that constitution alone will continue. You will only get the credit of defeating the kingdom. You will be honored. You will be respected. You can build a pillar there that I have won this. I have been victorious. You can accept the gifts and certain money given by the kingdom. The local people honor the local people there. The people will respect you with honorly that you are a very, very great warrior, very great parakrami. So they will honor you. You can install one pillar or something like that and come back to your kingdom. They will remain a loyal people to you. If the king maybe voluntarily remain a Samantarazu, Samantarazu means a subordinate king to you, that's all. No destroying human societies, no robbing people, no killing people, no kidnapping women and raping them. All that only barbarians can do in their name of barbaric religion. Okay? In their barbaric God, barbaric religion and barbaric people. They alone can do it. Now you understand first Hindu laws. This is not only in the books, this has been followed until Shivaji, even until just before Britishers came, Hindus have been following these laws. Okay? Even Krishna Devarayas, all these kingdoms Hindus have been following. That's why for Hindus war is a dharma. War is a yajna, war is a tapas. It has got whole different outlook. Okay? And this is the purpose of war. Now I told you briefly, you can study more and probably if you want we may discuss later. Then the third one, if there is a wicked person like Asura. Asura is a person not, now the modern people say that he is a kafir, he is an infidel. So this is just because he belongs to another group, you won't call him an enemy or Asura. See, they call us kafirs, etc. just because we belong to different religion. He may be a great man, even Vedavyasa, Shankaracharya, even Rama, Sri Krishna were also kafirs for them. Kafirs means they are villains for them, wicked people for them. Even Shankaracharya, Vedavyasa, Ramachandra, Sri Krishna, and everybody is even Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramana Maharshi is also kafirs and villains only for them. So this is a murkha, this is a foolish ideas. So we are not talking Asura doesn't mean that. Asura is by quality, by his behavior, not by his views and dharma, this religion he follows, what upasana he does it. He may be doing Devi Bhakta, Rama Bhakta, Krishna Bhakta, Jesus Bhakta, it doesn't make any difference. It is his quality, it is behavior, who is a Lokakantaka, who is unnecessarily exploits the society, cheats the people, kills the people, he terrorizes the people. He is Asura for no reason. He may belong to any group, whether to our group and outside group. So that is an Asura. So killing Asura is a dharma. Okay? Waging war and killing Asura is a dharma as long as he violates the values, the human values, universal values. Okay? Ravana is an Asura because he violated the human value, kidnapping a woman, that too helpless woman, against her wish. So that is adharma. Duryodhana wanted to usurp the kingdom illegally, Pandava's kingdom. So that is adharma. Kamsa was torturing people. So Kamsa was his own, Krishna's his own uncle. Duryodhana was their own brother, Pandavas. So he is related to Krishna also. But Krishna got him killed. So here it is an adharma alone, so is an asura and you have to kill him. So here killing the asura doesn't mean just because you belong to other religion, therefore we have right to kill you. Come out of this Islamic thinking. Be a Hindu, good Hindu first. You learn in Hindu history, Hindu Shastras. And we don't know, I tell you, most of us do not know. Our knowledge of Hinduism is less than zero. Less than zero. Of course, some of the people, respectable people among you, might have studied it, you know them. Those who have studied know them. But those who have not studied, those who are more brainwashed by our education system, our school and our history books, and then afterwards you read more of English books written by foreigners. All those books give you a negative picture of India. You throw them out. Then you understand what is Hinduism. Okay? Now 3 things I touched. One is the very idea of life and death, jiva and the body. Birth and death means to understand death, you have to understand the birth. Birth means only assuming the body and dropping the body. Jiva is more than the body. First you understand that. Second thing is death is also a yajna and tapas, and death itself is neither good or bad, killing itself is not neither good or bad, only with what motive you do and for what purpose you do. If you do it for dharma purpose, killing is not bad. Okay? Now, second thing is war. I discussed about the war, the principles of war, goal of war and the idea of war. And then you don't kill ordinary people, or who is not willing to fight, you don't force war upon him. A person who is unwilling to wage war, a person who wants to live a weaponless person, who wants to give up all weapon and remain like a sadhu, nobody should touch him. Nobody should touch him. Even the great warriors would not touch a person who doesn't want to wage the war, because that is a dharma. So war doesn't mean like that suddenly, unexpected, you go and jump on somebody, kidnap him and kill him and torture him and blackmail him, or you hold him hostage. And then what you say that like our aeroplane was hijacked, and in Afghanistan you see all these are barbarians, not human beings. They don't deserve to be treated as a human beings at all, because these are ideologies. Islam, Christianity, communism are barbaric ideologies, and Hindus have to learn this first. First you have to learn this thing, then the Durga Saptashati will be understood better, Bhagavad Gita will be understood better, all our Shastras will be understood better. First thing is, we don't know any book, we have not studied any book. Now these fellows are lecturing, oh Bhagavad Gita. Now you see every European Christian missionaries talk about us, oh Bhagavad Gita is advocating war, it is a very devilish book, it is advocating war. We don't want Bhagavad Gita, we want peaceful Bhagavad Gita, peaceful Bible. Bible teaches love and Quran teaches peace, Bhagavad Gita teaches war. You see how our religion is great. Hindus are fallen for this argument, these superficial ideas, these superficial statements. Okay? You study more, you listen to more our Shastras traditionally, not from the modern English translations by Europeans. Study traditionally. Now I discussed about the war, the nobility of the war, how the rules followed. Not inhuman, it is a very noble, it is a yajna, it is a tapas, it is a great honor. Then the killing of a wicked person, who is an asura. Mahishasura was a wicked person. You see his character. We are not seeing which jati. Now they are categorizing them, whether he is a black people or white people. Is Mahishasura black or white? Is Mahishasura South Indian or North Indian? Is Mahishasura is a Shudra or Brahmana? See, this is again a barbarians thinking. They are imposing, they have nothing but hatred for the, not only hatred for Hindus, their hatred for Hindus means hatred for humanity, hatred for human values, hatred for all goodness, all great culture. Hatred for Hinduism, I tell you, hatred for Hinduism means hatred for Hindu Shastra means hatred for humanity, hatred for human values, hatred for human dignity, hatred for everything, anything great. These are all barbarians. These ideas are barbaric. Okay? You listen to it. Then, see, we say Mahishasura because of his nature. because of his qualities. He has been given opportunity. Say you are a king, you can be a good king, do something good to society. No, he says, I will only kill the people, I will only torture the people, I will exploit the people. Now Mahishasura doesn't belong to a religion like modern religion. We have got Islam, Christianity, communism and Westernism. Now Mahishasura doesn't have an ideology. He's an individually, he's a wicked person, and he has compiled a few group of people, that's all. It is not of any group, any race, any ideology. Mahishasura doesn't have an ideology. Okay, he doesn't belong to any group, black or white or Indian or non-Indian or any group, not any ethnic group. He was an individually wicked person. He represents a wickedness, wicked values. Okay, therefore he is called Asura. Nowadays, this Asuratvam has become a groupism now. A groupism, a community. Like communism, all the communists have got the same barbaric idea. All the Muslims have the same anti-Hindu ideas, destroying, killing them, exploiting them all. All Christians have got the same. Now this is a group feeling. There is a group hatred. There is a group hatred, group killing, group destruction. Anybody is a non-Christian is like a villain to them. Any non-Muslim is villain to Muslim. Any non-communist is a villain to them. So it is only they categorize the whole group as a villain. In Hinduism, we don't have categorizing all group as a wicked or good. It is a value. Asuratvam is a given person's individual's quality. Okay? Individual's quality. That's why Prahlada is respected. Bali Chakravarti is respected. In fact, honored as a great saint. Prahlada was a saint. But again, Ravana's brother Vibhishana is considered as a great saint. So a wicked person, in fact Ravana's, if you see them, his father or grandfather was a rishi. He belonged to one gotra, one rishi's gotra. Because of his personal nature he became wicked. Therefore if he is an asura by his nature, first you tell him, give him chance, sama, dana, bheda. After that if he doesn't listen, then the last resort is only killing him. That too with a dignity, not with a cheatingful. Generally you follow. Even if that doesn't follow, then you bring an extra power and kill him. Now see, this is what I think in Mahishasura's killing. I think these 3 points, if you understand, not only Mahishasura killing, you will understand whole Bhagavad Gita, you will understand all our Hindu culture, Hindu values, Hindu understanding, you will get it. I don't know. It's only a small time. So Mahishasura Vada Devi comes with her divine power. So there, one thing we discussed yesterday, that all Devatas, there is a Devi who is in the heart of everybody as a Atma Rupini. She manifests through everybody as a collective. Similarly, it is a collective goodness. She represents the Atma of everybody, all gods, all positive qualities, all Sattvika qualities, and all also forceful Parakrama also. Rajasa also. Rajasa under Sattva. Under the guidance of Sattva, Sattva Guna, Rajasa Guna works. Therefore, naturally, she is a combination of Sattva Guna and Rajoguna. And Mahishasura represents Rajoguna and Tamoguna. Naturally, she is a combination of Sattva Guna and Rajoguna, a divine quality. She comes and kills Mahishasura. That represents a larger interest of the society, including the interest of Mahishasura. Mahishasura became very arrogant because of his power. He has not realized how the power without goodness is harmful even to him. Because that arrogance, the ego is hurtful to him. It is not good for him. Therefore, we try to teach him and explain to him, ask him to be a good person. Still he doesn't listen. And still he was arrogant, more arrogant. Then the killing was the only way. So his body has to be dissociated. So even that killing itself is a lesson. 2 things are there. After killing, he may go to some Papa Loka and experience the result of Papa for some time. Second thing is, killing itself is a pain for him. And he will lose all powers of exercising his wickedness, his asuratva, because you exercise your wickedness through your body. When the body is taken away, is like a weapon taken away. Then it may be a chance he will realize that, oh, I should not have been wicked. It is a chance for him to learn a lesson. And it is a punishment also. Partly it is a punishment, partly it is a teaching lesson, partly he is removed from the scene of the society so that he will not be a problem to the society. So, okay, keeping all these things in view, Asura killing, so Mahishasura killing is done by Devi. So that the very killing of Mahishasura is with a great compassion, not out of vengeance, not by believing that I am God and he is a Satan and all that. So not out of any hatred, only out of a teaching lesson. It is only educating him. It is only providing a new atmosphere so that he can learn. There you can see Devi is coming with all compassion, with all parakrama, killing Mahishasura and blessing Devatas. Then Devatas become very happy and offer a prayer. There is a Devata Stuti in the 4th chapter. I think I will read out and tell little bit in 5 minutes and close it. Because whole day I have been speaking. And my way of speaking is too stressful speaking, straining speaking. I have not picked up how to speak very gently and lightly. I need to receive some training. Okay, Devya Yaya Tatamidam Jagadatma Shaktya. Not only her killing, the event of killing, but the very nature of Devi. It is divine, compassionate. She is God of even Mahisha. She is goddess of Mahishasura. She is goddess of you. She is goddess of Muslim. She is goddess of Christian. She is goddess of communist. She is goddess of everybody on the earth. Because she is the same Antaratma Sakshi of you and I and everybody. Okay. She is a Sakshi of all people. She is compassionate and kind to all. There is no double standard as these three follow. Okay. Double standard who follow? This Westernism follows. Western civilization or even Islam, Christianity and communism. Their basic principle is double standard. They live with double standard. Their religion cannot live without double standard. They one, all others are another. And you can see them openly, it is visible to all. Boldly they defend their double standard. They have got right to kill you, but if you kill, it is a crime. If they kill, it is their privilege. If they kill, it is a privilege for no reason. But if you kill, even after they commit crime, still you are a criminal. See, this double standard is openly, outright, shamelessly upheld. Devi doesn't do that. All values are same, whether to the what you call Mahishasura or Deva. Sometimes she teaches a lesson to Devatas also, to the human beings, to the Manushas, to Devatas, to Asuras. Whoever commits the papa, they will have to pay for it. Devi punishes everybody equally. She doesn't take sides of Devatas. If Devatas commit mistakes, many times Devatas also were punished. Indra was also punished, lost kingdom and cried and then prayed, and everybody has to do that. Therefore, dharma is a dharma for all. It is not a group dharma. It is not a double standard. Okay? Devya Yaya Tatamidam Jagadatma Shaktya Nishesha Deva Gana Shakti Samoha Murtya. She is a Murti where she includes all Devatas, all human beings are parts of her body. See, this is the beauty of it. Who is the Devi? She is a whole cosmic form in which you and I are parts of her body. You and I have become small fingers of her. We are also part of Devi. You are a part, I am a part, we are all part of Devi. Devatas are parts of Devi. Whole universe, Panchabhutas, sun and the moon and the Surya, Chandra, Nakshatra, we are all part of Devi. Tamambika, Makhila Deva, Maharshi Pujyam, all Devatas, Maharshis, everybody worships her with love, lovingly and with all respect, with all devotion. Okay? Unlike these gods, unlike these religions, only their own group do it and other people are cheated. Devi doesn't cheat. She blesses everybody. Even killing Mahishasura is a blessing to him. After teaching, after giving him all opportunity, he did not listen. As a way of teaching a lesson to him, she killed him. Okay? Yasya Prabhava Matulam. Now there, they kill a kafir. Not to teach him a lesson, to send him to hell. To send him to hell, they will kill you. Even killing is only a punishment, not only punishment, it is a vengeance. To send you to hell, they will do that. But here it is itself is a tapas, is a corrective. Okay? Yasya prabhavamatulam bhagavanananto brahmaharascha nahi vaktumalam balam cha. Brahma, rishis, even they cannot understand you. That means you are beyond their capacity. You are highest being. Nashaya chashubhava yasya matin karotu ashubha. You destroy the ashubha. You destroy the fear in us. You give us the confidence. You give us the strength. You give us the wisdom. She is capable of giving wisdom to us, giving confidence to us, giving strength to us. Gives the strength, confidence, positive mind, dharma buddhi. She gives us dharma buddhi. Out of dharma buddhi, you protect dharma. Not that she gives you vengeance and hatred in you, you go and kill others, or Muslims or Christians or communists or anybody. It's not that we never pray that Devi give us hatred so that we'll go and kill them. Nobody prays like that. We never tell them that give us the hatred, we'll go and kill them. We say they give us the goodness, give us the confidence, give us the shraddha, bhakti. Okay? See how we talk of them. Nashaya. So Asura Nasha means what? Wiping out the wickedness. Wicked people are punished. Yashri Swayam Sukrutinam. It doesn't say that to send the Mahishasura to hell, eternal hell. Does Devi say that Mahishasura will be sent to hell? Or we are asking that, Hindus are asking that Mahishasura will be sent to eternal hell. Such a thing doesn't exist. That is a barbaric idea. Okay. Yashre Swayam Sukrutinam Bhavaneshwa Lakshmihi Papatmanam Krutadiyam Hrudayeshu Buddhihi. You are sitting in the hearts of everybody. Shraddham Satam Kulajana Prabhavasya Lajja Tam Tvam Natasma Paripalaya Devi Vishwam. So all these general prayers. There are some good qualities. I tell few points alone. Otherwise I'll just read out because every shloka I can't describe. Time is short. Kim Varnayami Tava Rupa beauty. Tava Rupa inspires. The beauty of Devi inspires good qualities, noble qualities in us. And then we see Devi Sarvavyapaka. She is sitting in the heart of everybody, every jiva. Plants, animals, insects, all Muslims, Christians, communists, all over the world, all people, white people, black people, whole world. She is the Atma, Antaratma of all jivas. She doesn't exclude anybody. She doesn't deny everybody. She is present in the heart of everybody. Okay? So when we see the Antaratma is Paramatma Devi in the heart of everybody. She is not in the heart of Hindus alone. She is not Hindu god. Hindus worship. Hindus have understood Devi and worship. Therefore she is a Hindu goddess. That much we can say. Hindus have understood her, discovered her. Our Hindu rishis have taught us, give the Diksha to us, and we are worshipping. That's okay. But that doesn't mean it is only Hindus god and then she hates other people. There is no hatred. Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshosti napriya. She is in the heart of all people, including the Mahishasura. She is in the heart of Mahishasura also. Sarvashraya kilamidam jagadam shabhutam ya mukti hetur. Now she gives the Chaturvida Purushartha, Artha, Kama, Moksha. She gives you education, she gives you pleasures, she gives wealth, she gives good health, she gives the marriage, children, whatever you want. She gives you your promotion, she gives you job, she gives you promotion, she gives you good family, she gives you good friends, she gives you good dharma, elevates your values and also gives you moksha. Anything you want, anything you are capable of, she is capable of giving everything. Ya mukti hetura vichincha mahavratatvam abhyasya se suniyatendriya tattvasarai mokshartibir munibirastamastad. That means she is not a wicked lady. She is such only wicked people can worship. That shows that even the moksharti, ahimsatmaka, sarvasanga parityagis also worship you. Because you have got such a vast nature. Because she is of different level. She is approached by all people. People of lower level, ordinary people, and also highly advanced sadhakas. Tyagis, viraktas, rishis also worship. Even devatas worship. You are such a all-comprehensive, all-inclusive. You are not exclusive God. You are all-inclusive goddess. Durge smrta harasi. This is a beautiful shloka. Durge smrta harasi bhitamashesha janto. Those who remember Durga, she will give you strength in your heart. She will give you wisdom, a positive thinking, strength in you, Bhitim, she removes the fear and insecurity from us. See, as you think of the Devi, she sits in your heart, she sits in your eyes and ears and sense organs and the body. She removes the fear from you. You become fearless, bold, confident, and very pleasant and happy. She doesn't say that like your biblical God and then the other religion, Abraham religious God, they say that, hey, I am hateful, I am jealous. Go and hate those people. Go and kill them. I'll share you my hatred. Goddess doesn't say, I have a hatred and I am offering you hatred. She says, gives you fearlessness. She removes all your hatred from you. She removes your jiva bhava in you, pettiness in you, smallness in you, makes you a large-hearted person. As you more and more you think of her in your heart becomes large enough. Okay. Durge smrta harasi bhiti mashesha janto swasta ismrta mati vashubham dadasi. You give us a beautiful heart, very generous heart, good heart, but confident. Strength along with strength. You give us a good heart, sattvic heart. No hatred for anybody, no vengeance for anybody. People may belong to any group, any religion. She teaches you, when she is sitting in your heart, you see love in everybody. You love everybody, all people of all. For no reason, you just don't hate them for no reason. Where is the need to hate just like that, for no reason? Unlike those gods. Okay. Daridra dukkha bhayaharini katvadanya. Daridra she removes. Dukkha she removes. That means physical strength, mental strength, intellectual strength, and also social, economic, everything she provides. So she is a goddess of economics also. Durga is a goddess of economics. Durga is a goddess of business. Durga is a goddess of education. Durga is a goddess of politics. Durga is a goddess of kingdom administration. Durga is a goddess of Brahma Vidya, goddess of dharma, goddess of peace, goddess of music, goddess of art, goddess of painting. She is a goddess in everything. Okay. She goddess of good social relationship. Society, she keeps the society in harmonious. Daridra dukkha bhayaharini katvadanya. Sarvopakara karanaya sadardra chitta. Just a beautiful sloka. See, this sloka is selected in the Sapta Shloki. See, in the Sapta Shloki Durga, which we every day do them, this shloka is selected there in Sapta Shloki, because this is an excellent shloka. So some of them are very gem of, in fact the whole Durga Saptashati is a beautiful, each shloka. Oh, for a person like me, each shloka you enjoy. It's so beautiful, so beautiful. Each shloka gives a very sublime ideas, a great strength and great heart. But some of them are much more beautiful. Therefore, 7 shlokas are selected. Out of them, this is an extraordinary shloka. Now, Drishtvaiva kimna bhavati prakaroti bhasma. You are so strong that sarvas, the wicked fellows, you are so strong, powerful. You teach a lesson to them. Still, if they don't listen, that's all. You can subjugate them. You can control them. Controlling, subjugating means what? Incapacitate their evil functions. That's all it means. They have got a power. They are abusing the power. They want to harm the society. She incapacitates them. Takes away her power so that they will become. Supposing if a person has got a knife in his hand and tries to kill you, pull away the knife, that fellow can't kill. Like that. She takes away the power from them. Sarvasurannarishu yat prahinosi shastram. Once she throws a weapon on them, they all can easily be subjugated, because her power is always higher power. Higher power. Lokan prayantu ripavopi shastra puta. See, one more thing. This is the beautiful thing I tell you. You can never imagine in those Abraham religions. When she kills the people through that weapon, even killing itself is a giving punishment and purifying them. Purifies their papa. See, when she kills the asuras, Mahishasura and other asuras, by her astra, when she kills them, the very killing is a pain. Body is taken away. Their power is taken away. A part of Papa is removed. Papa is washed away. They realize, oh my God, Devi has come and killed us. And also part of Papa is taken away. She purifies them and sends them a better loka. See, do those gods say? Do those the desert religions say that? They say they kill kafirs. After killing, send you to Naraka. Before that, they torture you. Killing also is not simply taking away. It is a painful death they will give you. They part by part they kill you, and they kill you very painfully. They will kill you. Chitra himsa we call in Indian languages. Very painful death they'll. That means for them killing is not the goal. Torturing the people is the goal. Why? Because they hate you. Why you hate? Because our God hates you, and our God wants us to hate you and torture you, and after killing you will be sent to hell. Why? Because our God hates you, that's all. Our God hates you, therefore you must be tortured. Does she say that Goddess hates them? Devi hates Mahishasura? No. Then while killing, what does she do? By killing she purifies them. Shall I read the shloka? You can read in 4th Adhyaya, 19th shloka. You can read for yourself. If you have a book in your hand, read this shloka. How beautiful. Lokan prayantu ripavo pihishastra pota. Her enemies like Mahishasura, they are purified by her weapon. By her weapon they get purified, and they will be taken to a good loka, and their wicked motive will be removed from that. How beautiful. She purifies by killing them. She changes their motive, changes their mind. They will become purified, and they will go to the better loka. Next time they will have a better janma. They will become more good people. So the purpose is purifying. You read any Shastra, you read them. Noblest ideas in our Shastra. Any shloka you take it. Extraordinary ideas. Therefore give up all this Western education. Okay. Now more shlokas are there, so I have to skip them. Each shloka is Vairishvapi Prakatataiva Dayat Tamsi. Even my Mahishasura, she has a compassion. She doesn't have a vengeance or a hatred like those gods. And he says openly, I have a hatred for them, and share my hatred and go and kill the infidels or kafirs. Kafirs are she says, Vireshvapi Prakatitaiva Dayatvayettam. Abba, even in the Mahishasura, how you have shown your compassion. Oh Goddess, Abba. Vairishvapi Prakatitaiva Dvayatvayetam. So, she doesn't have the hatred. She does with a good purpose, with a good intention. Shulena pahino devi. Therefore, with your shula, you protect us. Khadgena chambike. So her weapons are protective weapons, not torturing weapons. Our gods and goddesses hold the weapon. Ghandivam, Chakra, Vishnu Chakra, Shulam. They are all protective weapons. They only punish the wicked in order to purify them. Okay? In order to purify their wicked motive, wicked thinking. Not to take vengeance, not to hate them. Our gods are holding weapons. The weapons are not the weapons of hatred, not the weapons of vengeance. They are the weapons of purification. Okay? See, Shulena pahino devi, Khadgena chambike, Ghantasvanena nappahi, Chapadja nisvanena cha, Pracham raksha pratityam cha chandike, Raksha dakshine. Our gods, Devi, Devatas have got Chaturbhuja Devi, Ashtabhuja Devi. They have got 10 hands, 14 hands. In all the hands you can see them, Shankha, Chakra, Shula, Bhaja. Now our these religions, Abraham religion say, how devilish your gods are, they say. Did we say our gods are devilish? They are all purifying weapons. Those weapons only subjugate your wickedness in you. They help you, they protect you, they purify you. They are not meant for torturing and exploiting or they are not meant for persecution. Okay? Brahmanena Atmasholasya Uttarasyam Tatesh. So our weapons, our goddess weapons, our weapons have got 3 things. Adi Bhautika weapon, Adi Daivika weapon, Adhyatmika weapon. They are our devatas, our gods are, our gods means God alone. There is only one God appearing as many gods. This is known to us. So our gods are God or goddess. Their weapons are three angles you can look at them. One is Adi Bhautika weapon, Adi Daivika weapon, Adhyatmika weapon. It combines 3. Chakra has got Adhyatmika weapon. It removes the Ajnana. It removes Ragadvesha. It removes ego. That means it is a Sadguna. The chakra includes Sadgunas, Satvika gunas. It removes the negative qualities. It removes the Papa. Therefore chakra is a Punya. Chakra is a Pavitra. It removes Papa. This is Adi Daivika chakra. Adhyatmika chakra, I told you. Adi Bhautika is a physical weapon. It kills your body. So, It is a Adidai. Chakra is chakra or Trishula or anything. It has got a Adi Daivika aspect, Adi Bhautika aspect, Adhyatmika aspect. So it does from the Adi Bhautika aspect, it does the Adi Bhautika purification and destruction. And in Adi Daivika, it kills the papa, all negative things. And in Adhyatmika, it removes our negative thinking and all, it purifies us. It has got a Sattvikata and it uses the inwardness. So chakra, all weapons have got three things: Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika and Adhyatmika. So the weapons are very great. Therefore, we worship weapons also. As we worship Devi, goddess, we worship weapons also. Okay. Evam stuta surair divyaihi. Therefore, I think I'll finish in 2 minutes. Samsmruta samsruta tanno himseta paramapadah yascha martyastavairебistvam toshatyat malanane. Therefore, whoever worships her, prays to her, she protects them, loves them, cares them, and also protects from the wicked. Who are wicked? Other wicked people. From them she protects us. Tasya vittardi vibhavair dhanadharadi sampadam. She gives you the wife and family members, children, money, education and everything. Vruddhaye, all kinds of development, economic, social and political, all kinds of development she gives us. Asmat prasannatvam bhaveta sarvadambike. Oh Ambike, please be pleased with us, be compassionate to us, make our life more better. Okay. Itchetat kathitam bhupa sambhota sa yathapura devi deva sharirebhyo jagatraya hitaishini. She is a hitaishini for all people, for all people. She doesn't say that only I belong to these people. Christian God say that I am only Christians God, not others. I am enemy of them, I hate them. Islamic God say, Allah says that I am only Muslims God and I hate all those people. It doesn't say that. See, Jagatraya hitaishini. She belongs to all. She does good to all. Punascha gauri dehatsa samudbhuta yatha bhavat vadaya dushta daityanam tata shumbha nishumbayo. Next she kills Shumbha Nishumba. Again she is born second time. Born means reappearance, anek avatara. First avatara she came as a Durga. As a Durga, she kills Mahishasura. And the next chapter from Panchama onwards, again she comes as a Parvati, Lalita, she appears as a Lalita. Shumbha Nishumba she kills. So Durga herself reincarnates, again is a second avatara as Lalita. That we shall see in the next chapter. Okay. I am tired. Okay. So let Devi's blessing and anugraha be in all of us. So let us be enlightened, let us be strengthened, let us live peacefully for our own sake and for the good of the whole world. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om Tat.